Hi, folks. Thanks for attending our Friends of Liberty United TV show. My name's Bill Muse. With me today is Bill Thomas. Bill Thomas is the founder and president of Friends of Liberty United. And we're real excited today to have Jeff Corcoran on here. He's the chairman of the Clermont County Central Committee. He's also vice executive of the Goshen Township Republican Party. We're fortunate today to have Jeff with us. Jeff is part of the new leadership that is in the Clermont County Republican Central Committee. And I just want to welcome him. We're excited about a lot of things and wanted to introduce him to the township. And Jeff, why don't you take it from there and kind of let us know what the Central Committee does, a little bit about your bio, what you've done, and what your vision is.
Okay. Nice being here, and certainly excited about you two guys and what you're doing.
Well, we're real excited to have you. We appreciate it.
I guess one of the problems that the Republican Party has had in the past is that there's been a tremendous amount of infighting, which is not unusual for the Republican Party, by the way. We tend to eat our own. Mm-hmm. But I think in Clermont County it was excessive. It's been going on for a few years. And I think there was a feeling amongst the Central Committee members that there had to be some new direction for the party. So we now have Dave Carter, who is our party chair of the Republican Party, and then I got elected to be the chairman of the Central Committee. So let me briefly explain to everybody the way it's set up. Every precinct, and you probably all know what precincts are, it's a actual border where people in that border vote, and when you go to the polls, you tell people what precinct you're in. So in Clermont County, there's 168 precincts, and every other primary year, in Clermont County, it's every 4 years, so every other primary year, you will actually elect somebody to represent the Republican Party in that precinct. 168 all get together, they elect a party chairman, and they elect a Central Committee chairman. Central Committee, by the way, is all 168 precincts. So the 168 precincts got together, and I was elected, my honor to be elected chairman of the group. Although it is a lot like herding cats, it's a challenge to redirect this big aircraft carrier that we have in Clermont County and get it headed in the right direction. So we'll talk a little bit today, if you like, about the direction of the party. My background is varied. I served as mayor of the city of Madeira. I was the director of the Ronald Reagan campaign in both the primary and the general election. In southern Ohio, I had 42 counties. I've been the executive for the city of Madeira. I created a campaign school in Hamilton County called the Concord Group, which was a select group of 24 people every year that went through a 9-week program on just campaign management. I've managed probably 30 or 40 campaigns, from the congressional to the judicial to the state house to down to trustee, school board, etc. So my background is in campaign management, and I was a delegate for Reagan at the convention in 1980. So I've done a lot of things, but as you can tell by my gray hair, that's where I got it all, is from doing this stuff. But there's a new direction in Clermont County that I felt was necessary. And so I was elected, and now we're starting to move the Republican Party in a direction that is primarily focused on winning campaigns, nominating the right people, endorsing the right people, getting the precinct people actually involved in doing something other than fighting at the meetings. So we're trying to bring our party in Clermont County up to the 21st century. So that's my nutshell right there.
Well, as a member of the Central Committee, I appreciate the fact that I believe there's a lot of communication between everybody. So I like that. I like that you are bringing in some unity and some camaraderie, so to speak. So I do appreciate that. And we just got to work hard to get people elected. We've got to ask the hard questions. We've got to be the people that are leading. I always lived something very simple in my life: lead, follow, or get out of the way. Mm-hmm. And I like that.
Well, yeah. That brings up another interesting point. So it was pretty overwhelming in the election of new officers. David Carter had won 75% of the vote, if I remember correctly. So the Central Committee, obviously as a whole, was really looking for a change. They wanted a change in leadership. It was very loud and clear. So I think a lot of us had figured out that we were kind of losing our touch with the standard Republican voter, just the everyday person that's wanting to partner with our party, not agreeing with what's going on. So they've changed. We've changed leadership to show the community that we're destined to change. We want to change.
And that's what we're going to do. We've one of the things that we did right off the bat was the Republican Party has had maybe one event per year. We call it the Lincoln-Reagan Banquet. It's supposed to be in February. Every year we didn't know what month it was going to be in. I think last year it was in either June or July when we actually had it.
Yeah.
And we've been unable to attract any kind of serious national level speaker to the banquet, and that was it for us. I mean, so we've redirected that. We're currently putting on the first annual pancake breakfast, which is coming up September 24th. And I'll put a plug into everybody to go to the GOP Clermont website, and you can buy tickets. It's $35 an individual for the breakfast. Kids are, I think, $12. Our speaker is Hogan Gidley. Hogan Gidley is a name that not many people recognize unless you watch Fox News, and hopefully most of you do. But Fox News has had him on frequently on a number of different shows, but he was the press secretary for Donald Trump during the campaign, and at the White House, I think he was the #2 press secretary. So he's got a lot of great stories that he'll be telling us at the Pancake Breakfast, which, by the way, is on a Saturday morning, 9 to 11. So everybody, I want you to know about it, first of all, and then I'd love for everybody to come and attend, because our ability to attract national level speakers is going to be boosted if we have a very successful Pancake Breakfast, which hopefully we'd like to get 300 to 350 people there. It's already a financial success, so we've got a lot of major donors that have given us checks for serious money, and so we're not worried about the financial success of it. We're going to be successful there, but we want to make sure we have people that are attending and we have a good crowd. So that's the thrust of that. But that's the beginning of the turning of the aircraft carrier, is putting on a successful event. The other thing that we do is our meetings are kept to the point. We don't have any, or we've been able so far to eliminate any petty squabbles about things in the meetings. We have refreshments at the meetings. We have constructive discussions. More and more of the candidates are attending our meetings each month. More and more of the elected officials are attending the meetings, and more of the members are attending the meetings. So far, so good. After at the same time we're doing this, we're beginning to gear up and educate the members of the Central Committee on campaign strategy and tactics, and that's going to become the focus more and more as we go along. Next year is an off year, so I think I'll have the opportunity to really roll up our sleeves and get the group into campaign mode, because at the end of the day, for us in Clermont County, it's about electing a Republican president in 2024. So we have to know how to do it. This is a good year to get started. It's a midterm elections, and people are psyched up if you're in the Republican Party. We're excited about electing a J.D. Vance and Pat Fisher and Sharon Kennedy, and who am I missing?
Pat DeWine.
No, Pat DeWine is one, and Kennedy, and who's the third?
You said Pat Fisher.
Pat Fisher.
Pat Fisher, okay, I did. See what happens when you drink beer. So things are going well for us. We're satisfied. We're going to elect a Republican majority in the House. We're going to make sure J.D. Vance gets elected in Ohio. We'll keep our Ohio governor, and we're going to elevate the Republican turnout in Clermont County this year, so that we are more prepared to elevate it in 2024.
Now, one of the things that's going to change in the election this year for the Supreme Court justices is they will actually have an R or a D next to their name. In previous elections, what would happen is a lot of folks would go to the polls and they would not know who the leaning conservative or leaning liberal candidates were for Supreme Court, and they would vote based on name recognition or name ID or just throw a name in there. So now that the Ohio legislature has changed that dynamic, and now you'll have an actual R, you'll know who the Republican associated justice is and the Democrat associated justice is, or an independent if one desires. So Pat DeWine, Pat Fisher, and Sharon Kennedy, very, very critical election. If we lose one seat, the bench will lose a conservative-leaning bench. And if we lose that, you'll find that no matter what happens in the Ohio legislature, medical freedom, anything that's decided on any legislature can be considered case law by the Supreme Court. So cases get taken up to the Supreme Court rules on it, they can rule an interpretation of law and change the dynamics of the way that law was written. So they can actually circumvent, even though we have a predominant conservative House and a predominant conservative Senate, things can be case law. So it's very critical that we sustain a conservative bench in Ohio, or we're going to start seeing things turn more liberal. So that's a very, very important election. And even a lot of people tell me, I hear all the time, well, we don't have to worry about this in Clermont County. Clermont County is a red county. We're not worried about it turning blue. That's not necessarily true. In this last primary, I took the 2018 numbers versus the 2022 numbers. You had, as far as Democrats, we had totaled registered 11,645 in 2022 and 11,593 in 2018. So not a lot more additional registered Republicans. And you become a registered affiliated with a party in a primary based on which ballot you pick to choose. So if you pick a Republican ballot, you're going to become a registered Republican. If you pick a Democrat ballot, you'll become a registered Democrat in a primary. That's how you get your party affiliation. What I saw in these numbers was, even though the Democrats didn't have a lot more registered, we had a 64.7% drop in registered Republicans in the 2022 primary versus the 2018 primary. So in Clermont County, you can say we're red, but the reality is we lost 64.7 registered Republican voters. We had 46,908 registered in 2018 and only 28,482 registered in 22. And then the nonpartisans increased 22.3%. So those at home, you might think, well, maybe not many people came to vote. Not true. Total casted votes in 18 was 25,000 odd, and 22 was 27. So we had 8% more ballots casted, and we had 3.3 more registered voters in this. So it wasn't anything to do with less people voting. We actually had more people voting, but more people voting less Republican. And that just goes along with what you were saying, Jeff. One of the most important things that we can do in the Central Committee is exactly what you're doing. We have got to get in touch with the voters. We've got to show them that all this petty nonsense that's going on, the corruption that has been blasted as being the Clermont County elected officials are all corrupt, not true. We occasionally have some bad publicity. You occasionally have a bad person that comes up, but that doesn't classify all the politicians in Clermont County as being corrupt. We have some of the best elected officials in Clermont County in the history of the county. Would you not agree?
I completely agree. I completely agree. Not only the elected officials that serve in the administrative capacity, but we have a great judicial bench.
Yes.
Really a great. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I practiced in Hamilton County, practiced in Clermont County, and there are some great judges in Clermont County, and I can't say enough about them. We've got a great group of elected officials. There's no doubt about it.
And for those that don't know, Nita Beckman was moved to municipal judge, and I believe she's the first female judge in Clermont County history of municipal court. So Anita, a very excellent judge, worked in municipal for years as a magistrate, had the background knowledge. She was put in as a municipal judge to take over for Kevin Miles. Kevin Miles advanced into Judge McBride, thank you. Mm-hmm. Judge McBride's seat. And Kevin Miles, another solid conservative judge, but fair. One of the things I love about Kevin Miles is he's conservative, but he looks at the whole picture. And he's a great Christian man, great family. Coached baseball with him. He's an awesome guy. love Kevin to death. So I agree. Our judges, our politicians, I think some of the negative publicity that Clermont County gets, that everybody's corrupt, it's taken these one very rare instances that something comes up and it's exacerbated into we have corruption across Clermont County. Absolutely not true. Both our state reps are fighting for very conservative legislation. We now have a Second Amendment in this state as a result of our Senator, Terry Johnson. A lot of people don't realize that, but our state senator, Terry Johnson, was responsible for pushing that legislation at the state to make sure that you have the right to carry your firearm next to you without having a permit. So we have him to thank for that, and I'm very thankful for our legislators in this county and our elected officials.
Well, somebody, I'm going to throw a shout out. I think he does, all of our representatives do great jobs, but Mark DeColvey, I have become a big fan of Mark's. Mark does a great job. He's approachable. You can call, and he will call you back. I do appreciate Mark. I think he does a great job as prosecutor.
Absolutely.
Well, since he'll probably see this, I just want to say he's not a very good golfer. So.
Well, all I know is my family had an issue, and whenever there was a concern, that man was right there, and I do appreciate that. He was very approachable. Yes,
clearly.
Yeah, Mark's taken some very interesting. I mean, community is everything. One of the most important things, you have Republicans and Democrats in Clermont County, sure, but our community is everything. And there were some dangerous areas in Union Township and Pierce Township. Mark DeColvey took a serious interest in cleaning up where some very bad things happened over in Pierce, the apartment complex. It's the St. Andrews apartments. And DeColvey.
Is that part of the Royal Oak?
The Royal Oak. So Mark DeColvey really pressured. They had to sell, the new owners, and he went through court and everything. But Mark stood behind the fact that you are going to be accountable as landlords for your tenants. And I believe that to be true. We bought, as a person that owned properties and renovated them in Norwood, we had a drug-infested building that we purchased in Norwood, my partner and I. And the first thing we did was we kicked everybody out. We were like, well, we're not going to have this. Drugs, we were cooking meth, all this stuff going on. I had people passed out in the hallways. Went in, removed that nonsense, put some stipulations, 650 or higher credit score, very critique reasons to get or criteria to be renting from us. And that led to the change of that building. And honestly, the crime rate dropped in the entire block of that area. And it was because of the landlord. Landlords have a lot to do with the community around them. So it's very important to have a prosecutor that will hold landlords accountable for the crime at apartments.
So, that raises an interesting point. You and I were, I guess it was 6-8 months ago, you and I were drinking beer over in Milford discussing the Central Committee.
Yep.
My gollies. And we have a difference of opinion about the role of the Central Committee versus a role of Friends of Liberty.
Sure.
And what you were just speaking about as to Mark and his ability as a prosecutor is absolutely wonderful and critical, and I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that it's something that you guys really are proud of, and his performance. But that's not anything that the Central Committee gets into.
Right.
And it's important for that distinction, because I've believed all along that that organizations like like your Liberty Republican group, it's fine for you to look at the performance of the elected official, be critical of the performance of the elected official, and hold them to account for what they're doing. But all I want to do with our group is to find the right people, get them endorsed, get them elected, and after that, whatever their job is or whatever their performance is, that's up to other people to be critical of, because we don't have the time to get into that battle in our group, because you'll have 50% say, well, that's pretty good, other 50% say, that's pretty bad, and we'll spend all our time fighting rather than electing Republicans. So there's
Jeff,
a difference.
Could you spend just a few moments talking? So that brings up an interesting point. So one of the things that I have questions on is, how do we determine who we endorse? So all of the stuff that they do that we don't take interest in, we have to take some interest in, because those acts play into whether, like when I endorse a candidate from our central committee, I look at the entire picture. You know, when the clerk of courts race, big controversy. You had Linda Fraley, or I'm sorry, Paul Camphouse and Tim Rudd and Ralph Velardo. One of the things I did is I called the sheriff's department, I called bails bondsmen, asked them questions. I did more due diligence to find out, who was the best candidate, who was the bad candidate, who people that interact every day. Same thing for the auditor's race, Rudd versus Fraley. There was a very difficult, situation. We endorsed Linda Fraley as a committee at the time.
When you say we, are you talking about the Liberty
Sorry,
Republicans?
I'm sorry, they didn't endorse. You're right. We didn't endorse. We didn't endorse, but how the public, they've asked me is, how do you determine how you endorse candidates when you don't really get involved in all the detail? How do you know who's good and who's bad?
Excellent. Typically, I'll tell you the way it ought to work, and then I'll tell you the way it does work.
Sure.
The way it ought to work is that people should be doing investigations the way you do. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be looking at least in my opinion, they should be looking at what kind of job does the elected official do? Is our auditor performing well? Is our clerk of courts performing well? Does the office run well? Those kinds of issues should be investigated by individual committee members before they vote to endorse somebody.
Right.
That's the way it should work. That's not the way it does work. The way it does work is this faction over here may have a block of votes in the central committee that want to support this candidate. This block of people over here may do individual investigations on it and vote sporadically. And then you find that a group that has a decent block of votes can control the way the endorsement goes. That's the reality of the system that we're in. I mean, ideally, everybody would take the time to investigate whether or not the person is capable of doing a good job or is doing a good job and make their decision on their own, but in reality, it doesn't work like that. In reality, the Central Committee is, they have their favorite people. People may come in and schmooze with half the committee and get an endorsement over it. That's just the nature of the way the system works. But it works the same in the general election. I mean, you have the Republicans fighting their candidate, the Democrats fighting their candidate. Very few people are actually doing an investigation. So whichever one of those groups has the most juice gets their candidate elected. And that's the nature of the democratic process that we're in. And our Central Committee group, I think, will become more and more educated because of some of the things we're doing. In example, our Constitution in Clermont County was complex, ineffective, nonsensical. I mean, there was very little that was good about it.
Right.
And we'll be changing all that, and hopefully we can build in some of the checks and balances that will allow us to be more thoughtful in the way we endorse candidates. That's what we're going to try and do. Now, whether it works, you'll never get away from the idea of a faction or a fact. Right now, there's 3 or 4 factions in the Republican Party, and even when you try and appoint somebody to a committee, you get blowback. And I get that. I mean, that's all part of the process we're in. So,
and I think Friends of Liberty has placed several key, I would say at least 20, 30 people on Central Committee from Friends of Liberty this past. And these are grassroots people. They're not tied. Friends of Liberty doesn't do endorsements. We don't sit in a private meeting or a table and say, we're going to all vote this way, we're all going to vote this way. There's no circle with Friends of Liberty. Some people may think there are, but there isn't. The people that came into Central Committee from Friends of Liberty, they are self-thinking individuals. That's one of the principles of our organization that I wanted to make sure I instill in everybody, that when we go to the table as 168 people, we're 168 individual-minded people, not 10 this way, 10 that way. I've disagreed with several friends on the committee. The clerk's race, I wasn't in alignment with a lot of people. And I took some heat for it, but that's just the way it is. I think it's important that the new committee that has come in needs to show the voters that our endorsement really does mean something. We are endorsing not because we're friends with somebody, but because that is the right person for the job. And I think establishing that boundary with the voters will reinforce our endorsement, because historically in Clermont County, endorsed candidates win the races. And that's a huge responsibility. Working the polls, I think you all can attest that have worked the polls. People come and they don't do their research.
It's terrible.
Yeah, they come, they're like, let me have your card. They'll go in and they will vote for that. Right or wrong, that's just the way it is, and that's just the voter. That's not some special thing that we have control over. So our job is to make sure that those people can trust that we're giving them the right candidate and not a swamp candidate or an establishment candidate. We want people that are working for the people. People, driving growth in Clermont County. I mean, I've seen tremendous growth in Clermont County over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, the Perina plant, massive development. I mean, the amount of jobs, money. You go out there when Millicron, out in the Williamsburg area, when Millicron went under, the Ford plant went under, they're starting to get hurt out there. A lot of lost income. Now this Perina plant comes in, reestablishes that huge deficit that they were experiencing to come in and help offset that. So you had a really struggling area in Clermont County that you've now, that the commissioners and everyone has come in and established this business. I'm actually, like I said, I think we're on the right path, and I think the voters need to hear the positive things and focus on those, and not so much some of the negative hearsay things to make it sound like that we're in a critical state, because we're not.
It's funny you say that, because to give you an example, I have people coming up to me who know I am on the Central Committee. Well, what do you think of this person? What do you think about this person? And first thing out of my mouth is, you need to research everybody. You need to take time, grab a cup of coffee, and sit down and read and do more and more. But here's an example. One of the people came up to me and said they thought Tim Ryan was a Republican.
Yeah, I've had that.
And I looked at him and I said, this is why I'm telling you to research. He is not a Republican. Well, and then she stopped thinking about it. I said, is there a little Democrat sign underneath him or next to where he's at? Does he say he's a Democrat? No. Research. And I think I'm making some waves with some people, because they're coming to me with some facts now. So I think it's working. I think there's you cannot do too much education with these people.
Right.
We didn't talk about it a whole lot, Jeff. Can you kind of break down in layman's terms what the Central Committee's responsibility is as individuals?
Well, yes, I can. I mean, that the old system that was in place prior to, I think, probably June of this year, was that the Central Committee would come together for their meetings, which would be almost monthly, but not quite. And not much would be done or accomplished except when it came time to endorse. And then everybody would show up for one reason or another, because people would call their friends and say, come on, we need you to endorse this candidate, blah, blah, blah. They'd come down, vote for the endorsement, and then you wouldn't see probably half of them for the rest of the year. So the ones that were left would do things like put together the Lincoln Reagan benefit and do other little things, but put out yard signs. That was it. That's not the way the Republican Party is in Clermont County now. And there, and I want to get back to what you're saying, but I wanted to address what Bill was saying too about the people coming into the polls and not knowing who to vote for. Here's something that most people don't understand, but it will make sense once I say it. The more educated voter, the sooner in the cycle they make up their mind. So if I'm an educated voter, you're an educated voter, you're an educated voter, all the people in our studio audience are educated voters, they make up their mind early. They know who they're going to vote for early in the system. If you think about it, you already know who you're voting for. You know who everybody that's educated, an educated voter, makes up their mind early. And so it is the less and less educated that make up their mind closer and closer to the election, to the point where people that walk in the polls and say, well, who should I vote for? They're the least educated voters. Those are the people that don't pay any attention, and there's a certain segment of the population that doesn't know what they're doing and just votes because somebody told them to do that.
Right.
And that's, of course, not a very effective voter and not good for our democracy. So it's important that we educate the voters early on. It's important that we get to those voters early on so that we can educate them about who people are and what they represent, and that when they go to the polls, they won't need to be taking a piece of paper and voting the way that paper says. So,
Do you have ideas on how the Central Committee could help educate the voters? Do we have thoughts on how we're going to do that?
we have the first thing that we're trying to accomplish now, which is different from what's happened in the past, is that we've sent out lists of voters, and those voters are identified as whether they're Republican or Democrat. So you can get on the website for the Board of Elections and take a look at every voter in Clermont County, and you can see the voting history of people as to whether they voted Republican or Democrat, or just voted issues only. I mean, you can see all this information that's available to us. We've sent out in Clermont County the list of all the Republican voters, and you have to define what a Republican voter is, but we've defined a Republican voter that anybody that's voted in a Republican primary in either one of the last two primaries, that's a Republican from our definition. We've sent that list out to all of the precinct committee people. They'll have the list. It shows who they are. In some cases, it has a phone number. In some cases, it has an email address. Our precinct people should make contact with all of them if they can. And that if you're doing your job, you're talking to everybody that's a registered Republican to first make sure they go out and vote on Election Day. I mean, that's the primary responsibility for a precinct committeeman, is to know the people that are Republicans, get them out to vote. And of course, there's a lot of other things that go into political campaigns. Not only getting out to vote, although that's the end, but yard signs are another important thing. Volunteers that get involved in doing all the tough work in a political organization. Fundraising is tough. I mean, we've got, right now we've got this, I mentioned this pancake breakfast, I'll mention it again. That's going to require roughly 30, as few as 27, maybe more than 30 volunteers just to make that happen on one day. So you've got to have people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and volunteer their time and help. So I mean, it's a big thing. It's very scientific. I mean, it doesn't just happen like magic. Everything is scientific. Everything we do in the Republican Party is scientific, or should be. There should be a good reason for it. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I cut you off, and I didn't mean to do so. So.
Well, one of the things when I was approached by a friend about joining the Central Committee, I looked at him and I said, why would they want me? And what would be my job? And one of the things that resonated with me was you talk well with people and you need to educate people, talk to them and tell them the issues. That's part of the Central Committee's job, is to be approachable to people, let them know what the issues are and what you've researched, and obviously promote the party. But is there some other things you can add to that?
Well, obviously, if someone is interested in getting involved in the party, the best way to start doing it is to contact either the precinct executive. Each community, each township has a township executive and a vice executive. If you know them, you can contact them. If you don't know the precinct person, and if you don't know the exec or vice exec, you can always call Republican headquarters and we'll tell you who they are. And we'll tell you how to get in touch with them, and volunteer somewhere. Volunteer to help us at the pancake breakfast. Volunteer to go out and go door to door passing out literature. Volunteer to put up yard signs. Volunteer to just have a yard sign in your yard. Volunteer somewhere. That's the best way to start. Very few people just all of a sudden get the light bulb to come on and say, hey, I want to be a precinct exec, sign me up. That doesn't happen. I mean, you've got people that are enthusiastic about the Republican Party, believe in what the Republican Party represents, and does some volunteer work trying to get Republicans elected before they step out and decide to be a precinct committeeman, because it's a big job being a committeeman. I mean, it really is. If you get on it just to go to an endorsement meeting once a year, you're getting on for the wrong reason. And we don't want you. I mean, we want you to volunteer, but we don't want you as a committeeman, because it's too big a job just to be doing the endorsements. And I hope that the people that are on the committee now, that are there just to do the endorsements, decide it's time to let somebody else get on the committee that will be more active and help. So that's what but communication is important. Educating the voter is important. And just being willing to roll up your sleeves, that's important.
So where is the pancake breakfast located?
It's going to be at the Oasis, 24th of September, which is, tomorrow's what, the 1st? Or is tomorrow the 31st? Tomorrow's the 1st.
First, yeah.
Yeah. So it's on a Saturday, so 3.5 weeks from today, I guess,
Yeah.
we'll have the pancake breakfast.
Oasis over in Miami Township.
Hogan Gidley will be there. J.D. Vance is going to be there, who's one of our, obviously our senatorial candidate, but one of the people we're really trying to elect. There'll be some other statewide candidates there. After we're going to have a special event afterwards for people that want to donate a little more money to the Republican Party. They get into a private event with J.D. Vance and Hogan Gidley. So we'd like to, if you get on the website, you can see all this stuff and it'll spell out. GOP Clermont is the website. 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on the 24th of September. Hogan Gidley, J.D. Vance is the pancake breakfast. And by the way, it's more than pancakes. It's a full breakfast menu.
Great.
So that's what.
It's not a buffet, is it?
I think, why couldn't it be a buffet? I think it probably is. I actually never asked that question.
Are masks required?
No masks required.
Let's talk about Friends of Liberty for a second. One of the things that resonated me to the group was I liked the subgroups that was inside of it.
Yeah.
Why don't you go over some of those and let people know? And we would love to have people come. Jeff came, and when he became in the new leadership, Jeff came and he talked to everybody and kind of introduced himself and filled him in what his thoughts were and where he was going. But why don't you kind of fill us in on the subgroups?
Yeah, so Friends of Liberty, I know we've kind of been a little silent over the last couple of months, and we're getting heated up a little bit more in September as we get closer to the election. Typically summer months, or a lot of people are out and you're spending time with your family. But our committees are still working very active. We have our mandates committee, which is working on medical freedom. Mm-hmm. And there's an initiative throughout the state to get a medical freedom bill on the ballot. And they're past all the predecessor steps to the final step. It's already been through Yoast and everything. They're at the 500,000 signature collection mark. So we have to get 500,000 signatures collectively to get it on the ballot. And this would be a full medical freedom for all of our medical workers to not be required to be vaccinated. We talk about vaccines. Everybody I know that's vaccinated is getting this virus. They're getting it, and they're just as sick as I was when I had gotten it. I've remained unvaccinated. I won't get vaccinated. I've passed up on jobs. It's cost me quite a bit of salary, potential jobs, because I'm not vaccinated. But in healthcare, you're required to be vaccinated in most instances. And they tell you that we want you vaccinated to protect others. Well, though we've proven, everybody at this point, unless your head's in the sand, you know that you're going to get the virus even if you're vaccinated. So the vaccination has nothing to do with the spread. The speculation is that the vaccine will keep you from getting really sick or dying from the virus. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so I won't make a comment on that. But what I have seen in my personal life is the people that are getting this virus, that are vaccinated, are getting it as bad or worse than I have gotten it. Some people aren't getting it bad that are vaccinated, but there were lots of people that got the virus and didn't get very sick that weren't vaccinated. So there really is no rhyme or reason. I don't believe the CDC knows a lot of things. They've even come out and admitted that some of the stuff they've put out was wrong. So our mandates committee really fights this nonsense that has politicized healthcare and wants to put an end to it. And although our legislators have put some medical freedom stuff in place up in Columbus, it's not enough. Our medical workers are critical to taking care of you, your loved ones. We had people dying in homes, retirement homes. They couldn't see their families. Just lots of awful stuff with this vaccination and virus. And I believe there was overreach, and so does this group. So this group is adamantly fighting for that. And if you have a passion to stick up for your healthcare workers and tell them that they should not lose their job if they don't get vaccinated, that's a choice. If you want to get vaccinated, knock yourself out. I don't have a problem with somebody that's vaccinated. That's their choice. But don't demand that you're going to lose your job. So if you're interested in that, the mandates committee is led by Kim Martin. does a great job. They're extremely active. They have a very large following, and they work at a state level. They're tied in at multiple facets throughout the state. The election integrity has worked with our Board of Elections on several things that they've identified as potential election issues. I know another group has portrayed themselves as the people that brought up the fact that the video footage of where the drop-off box was on them. Actually, no, our election integrity group had been working with the Board of Elections on the video capturing of the ballot box for a while. We just didn't blast the Board of Elections like a bunch of raving lunatics as being some messed up Board of Elections. Stephanie Haidt, all of them are great people. It takes time to work through those issues, and that's what our committee does. We work through the issues without the drama. So if you don't see us on Facebook blasting the Board of Elections because there's an issue, that's because we're working with them behind the scenes and trying to address the issue. Issues addressed. We're working on other issues, and that committee's led by Jerry Seipelt and Calvin Poley. They do a very good job, and they're very active, and they're trying to clean up any potential issues that might jeopardize the vote in Clermont County. We're really focused on Clermont right now, not at the state level. That's kind of a next step. And then we're also doing the clergy outreach, which, Bill, you're more involved with that, where we're really trying to reach out to the churches. One of the things that was disturbing to me when I started Friends of Liberty is how many Christians are scared to announce their political views. I'm sorry, I don't have much faith or any sort of, doesn't scare me to say anything about against liberalism in America. It's terrible. Minneapolis, out in Minnesota, teachers union trying to say that if you're a minority, you should be skipped in layoffs, and white people teachers should be laid off before a minority teacher, despite how long they've been employed. So seniority was being taken off the table, and they went and basically what I would feel straight up discrimination, and that's being fought in court. But that's just one little area. This stuff's happening throughout the country. Critical race theory, SEL, they want you to believe. So many Christians believe, well, selective emotional learning is such a great thing for our kids. Social emotional learning. It's great for the kids. We need to identify when the kids are going through struggles. I believe that. I think that our youth, especially in the environment that they've been placed in, they do have some social issues. But the way that we're going about it is we're worried about them. I'm more concerned about the SEL of the teachers. So one of the things I said to Milford in a meeting with their district psychologist was, what are we doing about the teacher's mental health? Because I'm seeing some serious mental issues with the teacher based on what I see on social media. We're all focused on the student's mental health, but how about the teachers? How does the teacher's mental health play into the student's mental health? And that's a big, big thing that I'm fighting with the education side. So we do have an education group, although it's really just me working with the schools and several other people fighting for school boards and making sure we have the right candidates for school board, fighting some of these issues. We've got some things going on in West Clermont. Lakota's another big hot district. Anderson. Lebanon, we have Satan Club in the fourth grade out in Lebanon that we're dealing with. So we're tackling all these issues, and if you have interest in fighting those battles, we're the committee to get with. We fight them. I know there's so many other initiatives out there. I go to some of these meetings. You sit for an hour, and they just talk about things they want to do. And Friends of Liberty, we do it. We may get together once a month and have a meeting and talk about it, but we have committees that are action. They're action-driven committees. When you get with them, it is step by step. Here are the action items, and you can be assigned to get involved and really do something. And that really led a lot of these grassroots people into taking interest in Central Committee, and they joined Central Committee because most of them didn't even know what Central Committee was. And we have filled a lot of seats based on them getting into Friends of Liberty, getting a taste of what it's like, realizing how messed up things are, and saying we want to change. And that's what we're about. We're about change. We're about change. I want to see conservative values, which is all about people mistaking what's conservative values. It is equality, true equality. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian. I don't care what your ethnic background is. If you're qualified to do the job, you're hired to do the job, period. Doesn't matter. But what we find is, and we've had this going on in Ohio for a long time, affirmative action, making sure that years and years ago, I applied to be a state trooper. They take a picture and they staple your picture on your application. That's because they want to know what you look like. I think that's wrong. If you take a test, which you do as a state trooper, you take a test, you take a polygraph, you go through all these steps. They do walk around your neighborhood, ask people questions. If you get through all that, you're qualified. It's that simple. I even went one step further and took EMT class because I didn't feel like the first responders course was enough. Most of the time, officers are the first ones to the scene. If I can intubate or do something, I wanted the knowledge to do it, so I took EMT. I had all this and all this background to try to be a state trooper, and I couldn't do it because it was, there's certain amounts of people that have to be hired. So conservative values truly mean equality. We believe in American values, history, what built this country for many years. Think about this. Where's America at now versus where America was 50 years ago? Those conservative values that this country was built upon obviously made it the strongest nation in the world. It did. Our military was strong. Our presence was strong. You can bring race into this and say, well, the racism in America is the black stain of America. Sure, I won't disagree with that. I fully believe that there's some things that happen in American history that aren't great. But we don't want to negate the great things that happen in American history. And we, over the years, have tried to mend the two together. But then now we're dealing with this liberal movement that is pushing conservative values out the window. They want to see us be more dependent on the government, take money. We see student loan forgiveness, all this stuff. Hardworking people that pay taxes and didn't get to go to college, paying for somebody else's school, that is just ridiculous. So if any of those things upset you or interest you, Friends of Liberty is the place to be.
Well, once again, that's the reason why I got involved in it. Is there were some things resonated with me, and it was the Christian vote. And myself and James Kidwell are in charge of that. And we will be having Doug Simpson, who does a great presentation about the Christian vote in America. And we will be doing that later on. But we're going to wrap this up, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in to us. We welcome questions. What's the web or the email address they can send questions
Absolutely.
to?
So it's FOLUnited@gmail.com if you have questions. That's F as in Frank, O as in octopus, L as in Larry, and U as United at gmail.com. So any questions, please email us. If you'd like to join our mailing list, we'll get you on.
Okay. Anything else you would like to add, Jeff? We're expecting great things out of this Republican Party.
I am too, actually, but it's up to everybody on the committee.
Yes.
Really, that's what makes it work. I know both of you are on the committee, and I know you're working hard for the Republican Party. But it takes, we're doing so many things. It takes 168 people to make it happen, and I think the big test on all this will be in 2024 when we elect a Republican president, and finally get a chance to fix all the insanity that's out there, fix the madness, stop the madness. We'll finally get a chance to do that in 2024, and that's when we'll figure out if all this work that we've embarked upon is paying off. So thank you for inviting me over today to speak to your group.
You have an open invitation anytime you want to come on. We'd love to hear from you and love to hear what's going on. And I hope everybody attends this pancake breakfast. Michael Loge is doing a great job at it. And, we're moving, we're going forward. And I just want to tell everybody I appreciate you calling in or watching in. And I appreciate the two fellows that we have here, Jeff and Bill Thomas. I appreciate all of you for being here. Get informed, people. Read, get informed, know what you're doing. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.